Your home is on fire. More than 500 workers arrive. They know how to save your damaged and burning building, but they stand in the street and they watch. Their owner is Crassus, and he offers to buy your home. You obviously say no. The fire continues to spread, and your home is worth less and less every minute. And with it, the offer drops. At last, under huge pressure, you sell. And only then does the crew move in. Now, they're not saving your home, they're saving their boss's home, Crassus. Now, this is a famous story. But why did a city as large as Rome have no public fire service? And the answer will show us, number one, how Crassus turned fire into money, and crucially money into power, but also something deeper about the power and political dynamics of Rome itself. So first, let's picture Rome in the 1st century BC. It was the largest city around the Mediterranean Sea, with a population that could have been close to 1 million. Many people lived in tall blocks of flats called insulae, and some of them rose 5-6 stories above the street, and these streets were incredibly narrow. So the neighbours could probably close to shake hands through these windows across the streets. A little bit like what happened in Elizabethan England when they taxed land downstairs, so the upstairs kind of grew and grew over the streets until the houses were, nearly touching. And you have to remember as well, in Rome at this time, wood is everywhere. People cooked over open fires. They used oil lamps for light and burned charcoal for heat. So one small flame could ignite in a random room. That could then take out that room, then a floor, then a whole block, then the block next to it. And Rome had no full-time public fire service. Now, it might sound mad today that Rome could send armies across the world, build massive aqueducts, viaducts, huge military campaigns, but it couldn't keep a small trained group of firefighters in its own capital. But this was not because the Roman leaders missed the danger or that they couldn't do it. They were afraid of something else entirely. And that's something we'll discuss in a second. But first, let's meet the man who saw all this danger, all these fires, and thought, I think I could make a couple of quid off that. And this lovely gentleman was Marcus Licinius Crassus. He came from a rich Roman family. He became a soldier, a politician, and eventually the richest Roman of his era. And his great skill was simple. He knew how to buy things when their owners had kind of run out of choices, and he made a career of this, and we'll get to some of that in a second. He learned a lot of this skill during one of the worst periods in Roman history. So in the 80s BC, a general named Sulla took control of Rome, and he put lists of names in the forum, in the main public square, and these lists were called prescriptions. If your name appeared on one of these lists, anyone in Rome could kill you. Not just they could kill you, but if they did kill you, they received part of your property as a reward, and the rest was taken and sold. So this was not only a political purge, Sulla getting rid of his enemies, but it was also a huge property sale and general bonanza. And remember, this property is being sold with the owner dead. So Crassus, who knew what it meant to lose everything, because previously his family had backed a losing side in some earlier fighting. His father and brother were killed and he had to flee the country. Later, he had raised some soldiers and returned with Sulla, and he was now on the winning team. For Crassus, it was time to go shopping. And he bought the homes and land of many prescribed and then killed men for a very small part of their actual value. And Plutarch tells us about a potentially even darker charge, which is not certain, but it gives a feel of the man. And people accuse Crassus of adding people's names to the list, to the proscriptions list, simply because he wanted their property. Like I say, we don't know if it was true, but again, Plutarch does tell us that even Sulla stopped trusting Crassus after this event. You can see the temptations, and you can see why in a chaotic post-war environment where people are being killed left, right and centre, if you saw a particularly tasty property, where the temptation for Crassus to add a name to the list may come from. But if Sulla thinks you've gone too far, that's quite a bad review. But these sales helped Crassus build his fortune. And later, the fire service he gave, if you can call it that, helped him build it even more. So Crassus owned more than 500 men who had once been architects and builders who had become enslaved, and he took these men to buildings when they caught on fire, and he had sent his men to the owners, but crucially also to the people next door, and maybe a couple of doors down. And in a city full of wood, next door often meant on fire in a few minutes. So the deal's begun straight away. Crassus offered to buy the burning property at a very low price. He'd make the same offer on the homes next door. And then the owners had to choose, whilst the fire was burning, whether to sell. And every minute they dithered, the building became worth less and less. Think about it like a reverse auction, where the longer you wait, the lower the price goes. Once the owners sold the property, he'd then repair the property and get some builders in, renovate it, and then Crassus would then rent it out. Now, Plutarch tells us that Crassus came to own most of the city. Now, that's probably too much, but it shows how he was remembered. So how rich did Crassus become? He started out with 300 talents and ended up with 7,100 talents. But the math basically tells us that his fortune, according to this potentially exaggerated claim, is that his fortune grew more than 20 times over. Crassus didn't believe himself to be truly rich unless he could pay for an army out of his yearly income. So it's not like he wanted to buy a large house or live well for the rest of his life. No, for Crassus, wealth meant being able to pay for an army. Now that tells us what Crassus wanted from the money. He wanted power. This allows us to answer the question we asked right at the beginning. Why did Rome have no public fire service? Well, think about what a fire service needs. It needs hundreds of trained men working as a group, ready to move through the city at any hour, carrying tools. Well, think about what else a group like that might be able to do. That looks suspiciously like a small militia, or maybe a small army. Now, Roman politicians famously did not trust each other. If there was a fire crew, someone had to control that fire crew. If politician A couldn't control it, he didn't want his friend politician B controlling it either. Because whoever controlled the crew could control the streets, protect his friends, and crucially threaten his enemies. So their thinking was fairly straightforward. Better to have no fire service than to let my rival have one. And again, this fear was not baseless. Later politicians, one named Rufus, did set up his own fire crew, and the people loved him for it, as you can imagine. But Rome's leaders obviously eventually saw him as a danger to the Republic, and he was put to death. So any politician who controlled a large group of workers in the city could turn that into political power. And that is exactly what Rome's leaders feared. Remember, there was no public police force either. You had to ask a very rich patron to protect you. So there's very little help for the poor, and a politician who gave out food, protected people, would always expect support in return. So no public fire service, and Crassus offered to rescue you and pay you something for your home. Well, he was now your patron. When the state left a gap, it allowed rich politicians or rich men to fill it. Crassus used his money exactly like this, and one of the men he helped is a name or a young politician you might have heard of, Julius Caesar. Caesar's lenders once tried to stop him leaving Rome for a new post in Spain, and it was Crassus who promised to cover his debts if Caesar failed to pay him up. And this allowed Caesar to then chase this role and allowed him to build his political career. And later, Caesar and the great general Pompey, they needed a third partner. Caesar had the love of the public support. Pompey had the soldiers, he was a great general. And Crassus, his old mate, had the money. And the three men made a private deal, which was later called the First Triumvirate. Together, they pushed Rome's government to basically give them what they wanted. They were the power base in Rome. So from Crassus's point of view, he went from turning other people's disaster into property, he turned that property into money, and then turned that money into power, which eventually helped him take control of the Roman Republic. So the burning house and the fall of the Republic are not entirely separate stories. They follow the same path. Find a gap, fill it with private money, and turn people's needs into power. Crassus, like we said before, had more money than almost anyone in Rome. But money alone was never enough. Roman leaders always wanted glory in war. And in 53 BC, Crassus finally got his chance and he led an army into Parthian land. He met the Parthian army at Carrhae, which is near the modern city of Haran in Turkey. And the battle was a famous disaster. Much of the Roman army was destroyed and Crassus was killed. Now, later stories give him a much more gruesome ending, and the story says that the Parthians poured melted gold into his dead mouth, and the message is quite easy to see here. Now, this story is almost certainly a legend, but people kept telling the story because it felt like karmic justice. It felt like the right ending for him. Crassus made cruel choices, but Rome gave men like him the room to make those cruel choices and to become powerful off them. People still needed safety, people still needed food and help, and when the state didn't provide those things, wealthy men would step in and set the price and build a power base off it. Now, Rome did get a public fire service in the end. Only the person to give it to them was the Emperor Augustus. Augustus created one in AD 6 and had about 7,000 men known as the Vigiles. But by then, the Republic was dead. Rome did finally get its fire service, but the help arrived in the guise of Rome's first emperor. Crassus was just one of the many Romans who turned desperation into money and money into political power. And this really is just one element which you could pick up on and pull at this thread to kind of see how it led to the undoing of the Republic and why Augustus was so popular and part of the reason of why the Republic fell. Again, this is another way where a historian who has what appears to be a quite innocuous or boring anecdote or story, when you're able to follow the tea leaves, can really provide you an entry route into a way bigger picture of understanding why and what went wrong in the Roman Republic that led to its collapse. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Hopefully I can make more of these kind of informal, quick videos. If you're liking it, please like and subscribe. Obviously, as you know, these things help for the algorithm, etc. Yeah, thank you for watching.